right, so in this last lick, we're now going to do something similar to what we did when we were talking about the major scale and a lick oriented around the major scale, in that we're going to follow this pattern that's mainly based around the minor scale and is trying to closely replicate the chord changes that are happening under it. So this whole entire lick is going to be working in this key of G minor, and our position there is 3, 5, 6 on the low E string, 3, 5, 6 on the A string, 3, 5, 9 on the D string, 3, 5 on the G string, 3, 4, 6 on this B string, 3, 5, 6 on the high E string, right? So it's the same position as before, and if you need a refresher, obviously we had that whole minor scale lesson. If you need to just kind of become readjusted to how that position works. So our lick here, again, like I said, we're trying to outline some of the chord changes that are happening. So our first chord is this G minor one, so we're basically, again, doing something that's kind of outlining these chords. So I'm starting here on the 5th fret of the D string, and then I'm going up to the 3rd fret of the G string. And now from here, I'm going to go up to the 6th fret of the B string. So what we're doing is a lot of single note per string licks, right? And this is a little bit of a deviation from some of the more scalar stuff that we've done before, in that now we're just seeing a single note per string. And this is actually, as I said, kind of outlining some of these chords a little bit more, right? So we get this wider intervallic sound where it sounds more like a chord, or more like we're outlining a chord rather than we're playing a scale passage. So I have 5 on the D string, 3 on the G string, and then 6 on that B string. Right after I play this 6, I'm right back to the 3 on the G string. And then I'm going to play 4 on the B string. So part of the reason I like this lick, and the reason I'm doing this, is this is actually a great exercise here. The reason I say it's a great exercise is because I'm only doing one note per string and then changing to the adjacent string. So it's something that's obviously tricky to do. Now we can do this all down-picked. Obviously we're still getting into alternate picking. And this is actually one of the circumstances where alternate picking might be a little bit tricky because we're changing strings so often. But it's good because it's just keeping our hands kind of nimble and teaching us to transfer over to different sets of strings. So after we hit this 4th fret of the B string, we're at the 3rd fret, and you can hear I'm doing this little pull-off, which we've briefly kind of hinted towards hammer-ons and pull-offs. We didn't get too into it within this course, but if we want to get a little bit more descriptive as to what I'm doing in this aspect, I'm just pulling off my middle finger, and as I pull off, I'm pulling it out this way so that it also rings the 3rd fret. So again, if you want to try to incorporate that, that's great. We didn't take any dedicated lesson time towards learning hammer-ons and pull-offs, so we can also just go straight to that 3rd fret if we find it easier. So we play that 3rd fret, we play that 5th fret of G, and then we play that 3rd fret of G. So we have right? So that's the first part of our lick, and again, we're kind of still, even though not playing a blues, thinking in how do we create a story? How do we create a melody? How do we do something that, you know, has some momentum to it? So now we have the second line, which is going to start off exactly the same, which is the 5th fret of the D string, up to the 3rd fret of G, and now we're going to do this cool little enclosure. So what we're doing here, again, 5 on D, 3 on G with my index. Now I'm going to go up to the 3rd fret of B with my index, and then back to the 3rd of G, and then finally to 5 of G. So when I do something like this, what I'm going to try to avoid, because again, we're doing a lot of switching from string to string, right? We're not doing as scalar shapes now where I'm going to be repeating things on the same string and I don't have to worry as much about it. When I'm doing all this stuff, I want to say, okay, I know I'm going to have to jump back and forth between these strings. So how can I minimize like the distance that I'm going to have to go with my finger, right? I'm not picking it up each time. I'm going to strive to just be able to kind of roll my index finger between the two of them, right? And the more I get in the habit of that, what I'm trying to do is minimize the movement in my left hand. Now, with any of this stuff, I've talked about this a lot throughout this course, in that we can always do things that isolate our technique and, try to improve things, but there's a certain amount of subconscious development that happens. And this is one of those instances. The more and more you try to play things quickly and you try to kind of keep your hands close to the fretboard, your hands will naturally kind of remember the most efficient way to do things, and you'll start to lean into that more. So this is why it's always important to, even if you're not to the point where you can try something up to speed or you can play it to speed, just giving it an attempt and going, okay, I'm not going to be able to play this up to speed. Maybe I can take it down to 75%, but just trying to do anything to a metronome, doing anything with a point of rhythm is going to force us to go, okay, can we actually achieve something with our hands? What happens when I put my hands in this scenario where I have to try to accomplish something or play a lick? We won't be perfect at it. We might not even really start to play the lick at all, but we can at least go, okay, my hands have been put in this scenario now. I know what it takes or what I need to work on to be able to do that. And the more you do that, the more your hands start to figure out on their own what they need to work on. So our lick again is just outlining this kind of G minor chord. And then we're going to a C minor chord. And that's where the second part of the lick comes in. And then as we do the lick again, we have that enclosure. So again, following the same tenets of what we've been talking about through all of our licks, how can we create a little bit of a story? How can we outline some of the chords? And now in a lick like this, we're now seeing something a little bit more advanced, how we're alternating strings a lot. We're using all of our fingers, we're shifting around, and we're highlighting chord changes within a minor scale. So as with everything, again, it's not a necessity that you play this perfectly. You might just try to play it note for note slowly just to get the exercise of what it feels like to go from string. You might need to switch up a fingering just because that's only what's going to work for now. Just note that, again, continuously working on the stuff, focusing in on our positioning and making sure we're taking our time, but eventually striving towards playing it to a click. These are all things that are going to help develop our playing and have these licks become a closer and closer part of what you can actually do on the instrument. So let's try it once more with the track. So again, that was a G minor lick, just outlining the minor scale and using some of our different techniques that we've covered throughout this course. And now we're just going to wrap things up and talk about a practice plan.